Imagine this: an infinite void. No sound, no form, just an endless expanse of darkness stretching out beyond comprehension. Suddenly, a burst of light. It slices through the void like a cosmic blade, marking the first moment of structure, of order, of life. This is the beginning not just of Genesis, but of everything. We think we know this story. God spoke, and the universe unfolded. But what if Genesis isn't just a creation narrative? What if it's the greatest epic ever told, a tale brimming with purpose, conflict, and redemption? Today, we'll explore Genesis in a way you've never seen before. Pause for a moment. Think about this. Creation wasn't a single, sweeping act. It was a sequence of deliberate steps. Why begin with light instead of life? Why choose a garden over a city? Every detail seems intentional, like the notes of a divine symphony composed with care and precision. Yet, Genesis also teems with mysteries. How does the infinite take form? How does something timeless begin? Genesis isn't just about the making of a perfect world. It's a profoundly human story, a tension between divine intention and human frailty. As its narrative unfolds, it invites us to wrestle with questions that echo through history. Who are we? Why are we here? What does it all mean? And, perhaps most intriguingly, what was the driving force behind creation? Was it love, necessity, or something beyond human understanding? These questions lie at the heart of Genesis, and today, we'll dive deep into its mysteries, uncovering a drama as layered and rich as any ever told. Before we begin, take a moment to support this channel. Hit the like button and subscribe to join this journey into the depths of one of the most powerful stories ever written. Now, close your eyes and picture it. The universe as a blank canvas. No stars, no Earth, no galaxies. Just silence. Then, in a single act of unimaginable power, a voice speaks, and reality begins to take shape. Genesis 1 is more than just an account of creation, it's poetry in motion. It opens with chaos, described as formless and empty. The original Hebrew words, tohu vavohu, evoke a sense of swirling disorder, like a cosmic storm of unformed potential. And then, day by day, step by step, this chaotic void is transformed into a masterpiece of order and meaning. Before anything else, light pierces the darkness. But this isn't the sun that comes later. This is a primordial light, a signal that marks the shift from chaos to creation. Pause here. Why does Genesis start with light? It's as if understanding begins with illumination, a reminder that clarity is the foundation of all things. Light is both the first act of creation and the promise that something profound is about to unfold. Next comes the sky, dividing the waters above and below. Imagine it, a vast expanse stretching over the earth, holding chaos at bay. To ancient audiences, this wasn't just an atmosphere. It was a protective domea symbol of divine control over what could easily become destructive. Even in this early act, we see balance and purpose, the separation needed to establish harmony. The earth, once submerged in waters, now bursts forth with potential. Dry land emerges, giving way to oceans, rivers, and forests. Grains begin to sprout, trees stretch skyward, and life takes root. This is preparation, not just creation, a stage being meticulously set for the players yet to arrive. The level of detail is staggering, each element feeding into the next, each step building upon the last. It's a reminder that nothing in Genesis is accidental. The sun, moon, and stars take their places. But here's the subtle brilliance. These celestial objects, often worshipped in ancient cultures, are reduced to functional roles in Genesis. They're not gods, but tools, markers of time, seasons, and rhythms. This deliberate framing declares that the heavens are the handiwork of one creator. It's a quiet yet bold statement of sovereignty, reclaiming the cosmos from myth and imbuing it with divine purpose. With a flourish, life springs into motion. Birds take to the skies, their wings painting patterns in the air, while the seas teem with fish of every kind. Picture it: dolphins leaping, schools of fish darting, and the mighty leviathan gliding through the depths. Each creature has a role to play, a purpose in this vibrant mosaic of life. The diversity of creation isn't just functional, it's celebratory. Genesis portrays this day as a crescendo of creativity and joy. Land animals roam the earth, completing the tapestry of life. Then the narrative shifts dramatically. Humanity is formed not as an afterthought, but as the climax. The Creator declares, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness." This singular moment sparks centuries of theological debate. Is this US a reference to the Trinity, a heavenly council, or something else entirely? Regardless, what's clear is humanity's unique role. To be made in the image of God is to carry both privilege and responsibility, a reflection of divine intention and a call to stewardship. And then everything stops. The seventh day is not about exhaustion but fulfillment. Rest becomes sacred, woven into the fabric of creation itself. This divine pause speaks to a rhythm of work and reflection, a reminder that balance is as essential as creation itself. But Genesis doesn't just recount what was made. It continually asks us, why? Why light first and rest last? Why humanity in the image of God? Every detail whispers that there is purpose herein, overarching meaning waiting to be uncovered. Genesis 1 isn't merely a beginning. It's a declaration that life isn't random. It's intentional, meaningful, and beautifully interconnected. It calls us to marvel at the intricacy of a creator who brought light to darkness and order to chaos. And it leaves us with a profound question. What does it mean to live as stewards of this divine masterpiece? Close your eyes and picture it: a lush garden, overflowing with life. Rivers snake through its heart, nourishing every corner of its fertile soil. Towering trees sway gently in the breeze, their leaves shimmering in the golden light. This is Eden, not just a garden, but a sanctuary. At the center, two trees stand apart, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Together, they symbolize a tension that lies at the heart of the human story: freedom and limitation, life and choice. Into this paradise steps the first human, Adam, formed not from a cosmic explosion or a divine snap of the fingers, but from the very dust of the earth. The Hebrew word Adamah underscores this connection. Adam is of the ground, bound to the soil that sustains him. But he is more than clay. In an intimate and transformative moment, God breathes life into him. His chest rises, his eyes open, and he is alive. Imagine the wonder of that moment, seeing the world for the first time, a perfect creation, unmarred by pain or sorrow. Yet Adam is not meant to walk this garden alone. God declares, "It is not good for the man to be alone." The first time in Genesis that something is deemed not good. From Adam's Reba, symbol of shared essence, God creates a partner, Eve. When Adam sees her, his reaction is poetic and profound. "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Their connection is both physical and spiritual, a reflection of unity and partnership. Together, they embody the beauty of relationships and the sacredness of companionship. For a time, everything is perfect, but perfection has its own fragility. Enter the serpent, a figure of cunning and subtlety. Its presence disrupts the harmony of Eden, its voice sowing seeds of doubt. Did God really say? It's a question dripping with both curiosity and rebellion, a challenge to divine authority wrapped in the guise of enlightenment. The serpent's strategy isn't force, it's persuasion. It doesn't compel Eve, it entices her, presenting the forbidden fruit as something desirable, even necessary. It promises knowledge, but hides the cost. The bite is deceptively simple, an act that lasts only a moment, yet reverberates through eternity. Eve takes the fruit, eats, and hands it to Adam, who follows. Their eyes are opened, but instead of divine wisdom, they are consumed by shame. For the first time, they see their own vulnerability, their nakedness. They scramble to cover themselves with fig leaves, as if a flimsy garment could shield them from the weight of their choice. And then comes the sound of footsteps. God walks through the garden, calling out, "Where are you?" It's not just a question of location, it's a question of relationship. When Adam and Eve step forward, the unity they once shared dissolves into blame. Adam points to Eve. Eve points to the serpent. The harmony of Eden shatters into division, mistrust, and guilt. Judgment follows, but it is not without complexity. To Adam, the ground, once a source of sustenance, will now yield thorns and require toil. To Eve, pain will mark childbirth, a bittersweet reminder of the cost of life. To the serpent, eternal enmity with humanity, its ultimate defeat foreshadowed in the cryptic promise that its head will one day be crushed. Even in the midst of judgment, there is hope, a glimmer of redemption embedded within the curse. The gates of Eden close, guarded by cherubim and a flaming sword. Adam and Eve step into an unknown world, carrying with them the knowledge of good and evil, a gift and a burden. They are no longer mere creations. They are beings shaped by choice, consequence, and the aching memory of paradise lost. Yet even in exile, the story doesn't end. It expands, offering the first glimpses of a narrative that will stretch across generations. The loss of Eden is not the end of humanity's relationship with God, but the beginning of a long, complex journey back to Him. The story of humanity's first siblings is one of contrasts, tension, and tragedy. Cain and Abel, the sons of Adam and Eve, are introduced not just as individuals but as reflections of two paths, two ways of living. Cain works the soil, continuing the connection to the ground that marked his father's curse. Abel, on the other hand, tends to flocks, shepherding life in motion. Their offerings to God mirror their work. Cain brings produce from the land, while Abel offers the firstborn of his flock, a sacrifice rich in symbolism and devotion. But then comes the turning point. God looks with favor on Abel's offering, but not on Cain's. The text doesn't explain why, leaving the question hanging in the air like an unresolved chord. Was it the nature of the offerings, or the hearts behind them? Whatever the reason, the result is clear. Cain is consumed by anger and jealousy. His countenance falls, his spirit darkens, and his resentment festers. In an act of divine grace, God speaks directly to Cain. "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" It's both a warning and an invitation. God doesn't condemn Cain, but offers him a choice, a chance to master the sin that is crouching at your door. The image is vivid: sin as a predator, waiting to pounce, yet one that can be tamed if confronted with strength and humility. Cain doesn't heed the warning. Instead, he succumbs to the darkness within. He lures Abel into the fields, away from prying eyes, and in a fit of rage, spills his brother's blood. The first human death is not natural, it is murder. Brother turns against brother, and the harmony of humanity fractures further. The earth itself bears witness, crying out with the blood of the innocent. When God confronts Cain, his response is both defensive and haunting. "Am I my brother's keeper?" It's not just a deflection, it's a question that echoes across history, challenging humanity's sense of responsibility to one another. God's judgment is swift but measured. Cain is cursed to wander the earth, disconnected from the soil he once worked. Yet even in judgment, there is mercy. God places a mark on Cain, a mysterious sign that protects him from vengeance, blending justice with grace. From Cain's line, humanity begins to grow, each generation weaving its own story. The genealogies that follow may seem like lists, but they are far more. Each name represents a life, a legacy, a link in the chain of human history. They remind us that even in the wake of tragedy, life continues, carrying with it the complexities of sin, grace, and redemption. The story of Cain and Abel is more than a tale of sibling rivalry. It's a mirror, reflecting the tensions that lie within every human heart. Envy and love, choice. It challenges us to ask, what does it mean to be our brother's keeper? And how do we confront the sin that crouches at our door? These questions linger, shaping the narrative of humanity as it unfolds beyond Eden's borders. Humanity expands, but so does its corruption. The narrative shifts from individual stories to the collective state of the world, and the picture it paints is bleak. Violence and wickedness have become the norm, spreading through the earth like an unchecked storm. God observes this moral decay with grief, and the text conveys a profound sense of sorrow. The Creator regrets creating humanity. It's a moment that forces us to grapple with the weight of free will and the consequences of humanity's choices. But even in this darkness, there is a glimmer of hope. Noah enters the story as a singular figure righteous in his generation. This description doesn't imply perfection, but faithfulness. Noah stands apart in a world spiraling into chaos, and it is this faithfulness that catches God's eye. He is chosen for an extraordinary task, to build an ark, a vessel of salvation that will preserve life through the coming judgment. The scale of Noah's task is staggering. Imagine the ridicule he must have endured, hammering away at this massive structure while his neighbors whispered, laughed. The ark rises, a monumental act of obedience in the face of uncertainty. It becomes a symbol of faith, a tangible representation of trust in God's word, even when the skies are still clear. And then, the rains begin, relentless and unyielding. They fall for 40 days and 40 nights, transforming the earth into a watery abyss. The floodwaters rise, covering mountains, swallowing cities, and erasing the old world. It is both judgment and renewal, a cleansing of the earth, yet one that comes with immense loss. Inside the ark, Noah and his family, along with the animals, endure a strange, suspended existence. They are alive, but everything they knew is gone. When the rains cease and the waters recede, the ark comes to rest on Mount Ararat. Noah steps out onto dry land, and the world feels both familiar and foreign. It is a new beginning, but one marked by scars. The first thing Noah does is build an altar, offering a sacrifice of gratitude and reverence. God responds with a covenant, a solemn promise symbolized by a rainbow. Never again will I destroy the earth with a flood. The rainbow is more than a beautiful phenomenon. It is a sign of mercy and hope, a reminder that judgment is not the final word. Yet, even in this renewed world, humanity's struggles persist. Noah's story doesn't end in triumph, but in complexity. He plants a vineyard, becomes drunk, and exposes himself in a moment of vulnerability. This episode, brief yet jarring, reminds us that even the most faithful are flawed, that the journey of redemption is ongoing. The flood narrative is both sobering and inspiring. It forces us to confront the reality of judgment while holding on to the promise of grace. It challenges us to consider what it means to trust in God when the storms of life rage, and to reflect on the delicate balance between justice and mercy. Above all, it reminds us that even in the face of devastation, there is always the possibility of renewal, a new chapter waiting to be written. Humanity grows once again, spreading across the earth, but with growth comes ambition. The story of the Tower of Babel shifts the focus from individual figures to collective humanity, united by language and purpose. At first glance, their unity seems like a strength, a sign of progress. But what begins as collaboration quickly transforms into hubris. Let us make a name for ourselves, they declare, and with that, the seeds of defiance are sown. Imagine the scene: the sound of hammers and chisels, the clatter of bricks, the hum of voices unified in a single goal. They are building a tower, not just to reach the heavens, but to stake their claim to them. Babel is more than an architectural feat. It is a monument to human pride, a declaration of independence from the Creator, who had commanded them to fill the earth. Instead of scattering, they choose to centralize, anchoring their identity in a structure that reaches toward the divine. But their ambition is flawed. The tower becomes a symbol of misplaced priorities, of reaching upward while ignoring the foundations of humility and obedience. God intervenes, but not with thunderbolts or destruction. Instead, the response is subtle yet profound. The people's language is confounded. Words that once united them become barriers, and confusion spreads like wildfire through their ranks. The construction grinds to a halt, the tower abandoned, its unfinished form standing as a stark reminder of the limits of human ambition. The people are scattered, forced to do what they had resisted spread across the earth. What initially seems like punishment is also a kind of correction, a redirection of humanity's focus. The dispersion creates diversity, laying the groundwork for cultures, languages, and nations. It's a reminder that unity without humility can lead to destruction, but diversity within God's design holds potential for richness and beauty. The story of Babel lingers as a cautionary tale. It challenges us to consider the motives behind our own ambitions. Are we striving to make a name for ourselves, or are we aligning our efforts with a greater purpose? It reminds us that even the most grandiose plans are futile if they stand in opposition to divine intention. Yet, within the scattering, there is hopeful promise that even when humanity stumbles, God's plan continues to unfold. As the narrative of Genesis continues, the focus narrows. From the sweeping stories of creation and humanity's collective journey, the spotlight turns to one man, Abram. He isn't introduced as a hero or a figure of extraordinary virtue. Instead, he is a man living in a world steeped in polytheism and uncertainty, in a place called Ur of the Chaldeans. And yet, it is Abram whom God chooses to call, setting in motion a story that will ripple through history. The call comes with boldness and mystery. Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. Imagine the weight of these words. Abram is asked to leave everything familiar, his home, his culture, his safety for a promise he cannot yet see. The promise itself is staggering. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. It's a covenant of land, descendants, and purpose, but it requires a leap of faith that defies logic. Abram obeys. He gathers his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions, setting out for Canaan. The journey is not without trials. Famine forces him to Egypt, where fear leads him to lie about Sarai being his sister. Disputes arise with Lot over land and resources, leading them to part ways. And perhaps most challenging of all, the promise of descendants remains unfulfilled as years turn to decades. In one unforgettable moment, God takes Abram outside and tells him to look at the stars. So shall your offspring be. The night sky, vast and infinite, becomes a canvas of hope. Abram believes, and this belief is credited to him as righteousness. It's a powerful moment, not because of Abram's perfection, but because of his trust. Faith, in this context, isn't about certainty, it's about moving forward despite uncertainty. The covenant is sealed in a dramatic ritual. Animals are sacrificed, their halves placed opposite each other. Abram watches as a smoking firepot and a blazing torch symbols of God's presence pass between the pieces. It's a solemn and binding act, a divine pledge that underscores the seriousness of God's promises. Through this covenant, Genesis introduces a foundational theme. Faith is not merely belief, it is a relationship, a partnership with the divine. But Abram and Sarai are not immune to doubt. Impatience leads them to take matters into their own hands. Sarai offers her maidservant Hagar to Abram, and she bears him a son, Ishmael. The consequences are immediate: tension, jealousy, and division within the family. Yet even in their missteps, God remains faithful, reaffirming his promise. Finally, the promise is fulfilled. Abram becomes Abraham, and Sarai becomes Sarah. In their old age, they welcome their son, Isaac. His name, meaning he laughs, reflects both the incredulity and the joy of this miraculous event. With Isaac, the covenant takes on new life, carrying the hope of generations yet to come. Abraham's story is one of faith in action, imperfect, sometimes faltering, but ultimately steadfast. It invites us to reflect on our own journeys of trust. What does it mean to step into the unknown, to hold on to promises that seem impossible? Abraham's legacy is not his perfection, but his perseverance, a testament to the power of faith to shape not only individual lives, but the course of history. The story of Joseph begins with a dream. He is the favored son of Jacob, adorned with a coat of many colors, a visible sign of his father's love, and a source of envy for his brothers. Joseph's dreams add fuel to the fire, as they depict his brothers bowing down to him, a vision of future greatness. To his siblings, these dreams are insufferable, a symbol of arrogance and favoritism. Resentment boils over, and one day it erupts into betrayal. The brothers strip Joseph of his prized coat, throw him into a pit, and ultimately sell him into slavery. Imagine Joseph's terror and disbelief as his own family turns against him. He is taken to Egypt, a foreign land where his journey takes unexpected twists and turns. In Potiphar's house, he rises to a position of trust, only to be falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and thrown into prison. Yet even in the depths of his suffering, Joseph's faith does not waver. His ability to interpret dreams becomes his lifeline, eventually bringing him to Pharaoh's attention. Pharaoh's dream, foretelling 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine, propels Joseph into a position of extraordinary power. He becomes second in command, overseeing Egypt's preparations for the coming crisis. It's a remarkable turn of events. A boy, sold into slavery, now holds the fate of a nation in his hands. But Joseph's story is far from over. As famine spreads, it drives his brothers to Egypt in search of food. They stand before Joseph, unaware that the powerful figure they are pleading with is the brother they betrayed. The tension is palpable. Joseph recognizes them immediately, but he does not reveal himself. Instead, he tests their character, pushing them to confront their past actions. It's a series of heart-wrenching encounters, each laden with suspense and emotion. Finally, the moment of revelation comes. Joseph can no longer contain his emotions. He sends his attendants away and declares, "I am Joseph, your brother whom you sold into slavery." The brothers are stunned, paralyzed by fear and guilt. But instead of revenge, Joseph offers forgiveness. His words are profound. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's perspective transforms the narrative of betrayal into one of redemption. He sees his suffering not as senseless, but as part of a divine plan, a process that brought him to a place where he could save countless lives, including those of his family. This moment of reconciliation is one of the most poignant in all of Genesis, a powerful testament to the transformative power of grace. The story concludes with Joseph bringing his family to Egypt, where they are reunited and cared for. It's a picture of restoration, a fractured family brought back together through faith and forgiveness. Yet, the shadow of Egypt looms, hinting at the struggles that will follow in the next chapter of Israel's history. Joseph's journey is a masterclass in endurance, faith, and the ability to see God's hand even in the darkest circumstances. It challenges us to look beyond immediate pain and trust that there is purpose in the trials we face. His story reminds us that forgiveness is not weakness, it is strength, a choice that breaks the cycle of hurt and paves the way for healing. Through Joseph, Genesis leaves us with a powerful message. No matter how broken the situation, redemption is always possible. Genesis is not merely a collection of stories. It's a tapestry woven with threads of creation, conflict, faith, and redemption. It begins with a grand cosmic symphony, where order emerges from chaos, light pierces darkness, and life takes its first breath. Yet its beauty lies not just in the awe-inspiring act of creation, but in the deeply human stories that follow, stories of struggle, choice, and an unrelenting search for meaning. At its core, Genesis reminds us that life is not random, but intentional. It reveals a creator who not only brings the universe into being, but also cares deeply for the humanity that inhabits it. Through Adam and Eve, we see the fragility of free will and the weight of consequence. Their story is not just about a fall, but about the eternal tension between obedience and independence, a mirror reflecting our own struggles. The narrative of Noah reminds us that even in judgment, there is grace. The flood is both a reckoning and a renewal, a dramatic reset that carries with it the promise of hope. The rainbow, painted across the sky, stands as a testament that God's mercy endures even in the aftermath of destruction. With Abraham, we see faith in its rawest form, stepping into the unknown, trusting in promises that seem impossible. His journey is one of imperfect obedience, yet it teaches us that faith is less about perfection and more about persistence. His story, and the covenant that binds it, becomes the foundation for generations to come. In Joseph, Genesis reaches an emotional growing. His life, marked by betrayal, suffering, and ultimate triumph, shows us that even the most painful experiences can serve a greater purpose. His forgiveness of his brothers transforms a narrative of revenge into one of reconciliation, teaching us the redemptive power of grace. Genesis concludes not with closure but with promise. The family of Jacob settles in Egypt, setting the stage for the next chapter of their journey, a story of liberation and covenant that will define a nation. But the themes of Genesis remain timeless, resonating across generations. It calls us to see the world not as chaos, but as cosmos, a harmonious design, where every detail, every moment, carries meaning. As we reflect on Genesis, it leaves us with profound questions. What does it mean to bear the image of God? How do we live as stewards of creation and carriers of faith? How do we trust in a divine plan when the path is unclear? These questions are not meant to be easily answered, but to be wrestled with, just as the characters of Genesis wrestled with their own trials and doubts. Genesis invites us to live with intention, humility, and hope. It reminds us that we are part of a larger story, one of beginnings, endings, and everything in between. And perhaps its greatest message is this: no matter how broken the world may seem, the possibility of redemption is never beyond reach. Its truths are ancient, yet they remain a guiding light, offering wisdom and inspiration for every generation to come.